The scent of cedar and autumn filled the great hall, but beneath it lurked something more primal. The unmistakable musk of alphas gathering for the seasonal claiming. My skin prickled with awareness as I pressed myself against the cold stone wall, trying to disappear among the other Omegas brought as offerings. Unlike them, with their perfumed skin and practiced demure glances, I hadn't been groomed for this moment. My auburn hair hung loose and unadorned, lacking the intricate braids that marked those raised in the tradition. "Stand straight, girl," hissed the handler, her fingers digging into my shoulder. "The Alpha King himself is present tonight." I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. 5 days ago, I had been gathering herbs in the forest when the council elders came to my cottage with their proposition, my freedom in exchange for our town's protection. My grandmother's copper pendant hung heavy against my chest, hidden beneath the thin ceremonial dress. "Remember, Ilara," she had whispered before she died, "your heart is the one thing they cannot take unless you surrender it." The pendant was engraved with a raven circling a crescent moon, a symbol from the old religion before alphas ruled with iron fists and omegas became currency. The massive oak doors swung open and the room fell into immediate silence. A tall figure entered, flanked by warriors whose scars told stories of battles won. But it was him, the Alpha King, who commanded every gaze. He moved like a predator, each step deliberate and powerful. Dark furs adorned his shoulders despite the roaring fires. His face remained impassive as he surveyed the room, but when his eyes swept over the line of Omegas, something flashed across his features. Those eyes found mine, and the world tilted. "That one," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "The one with untamed hair." Every head turned toward me, and the handler's grip tightened painfully. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was meant to be overlooked, a token offering from a village too poor to provide a proper mate. But the Alpha King had looked at me, and only me. They brought me to his chambers like an animal to slaughter. 2 guards flanked me as we walked through twisting corridors of stone and tapestry. "Don't try running," one guard warned, though his tone held pity. "King Theron doesn't tolerate disobedience." Theron. Even his name felt like a blade against my skin. The chamber door loomed before us, intricately carved with scenes of ravens hunting beneath a full moon. My grandmother's stories came rushing back, tales of alphas who transformed under moonlight, becoming the beasts whose spirits they carried. "Wait here," the first guard instructed before both men retreated, leaving me alone. The door swung open, and heat billowed out from within. "Enter." My legs moved of their own accord, carrying me into a chamber larger than my entire cottage. Furs covered the stone floor, and a massive bed dominated one wall. A fire roared in a hearth big enough to roast a deer, casting dancing shadows across walls adorned with weapons and maps. The Alpha King, Theron, stood by a table laden with food and wine. He had removed his ceremonial furs, revealing broad shoulders beneath a simple linen shirt. "You haven't been prepared properly," he observed, eyes narrowing. "Which village sent you?" "Ashwood," I answered, surprised to find my voice steady. "We had little warning." His laugh was sharp. "Tribute. Is that what they told you this was?" He moved toward me. "What's your name, Omega?" "Ilara." "Ilara," he repeated. "Do you know why you're here?" I lifted my chin. "Our council traded me for protection." "And do you know what happens to Omegas chosen at the seasonal claiming?" The stories were well known. Omegas chosen by Alphas became their property. Some were treated well. Others were never seen again. "I know enough," I replied. Theron circled me slowly. "I wonder if you do. The council from your village sent a letter with their offering. Do you know what it said?" I shook my head. It said their tribute was defective, that you carry a sickness of the mind that makes you unsuitable. His eyes bore into mine. They claimed you see visions, that you speak with spirits no one else can perceive. The blood drained from my face. My sickness had been my deepest secret, shared only with my grandmother who had the same gift. They sent you expecting you to fail, Theron continued, to be rejected and returned in shame, fulfilling their obligation without losing anyone they deemed valuable. Humiliation burned through me, followed quickly by anger. I didn't ask to be here, I said, tremor breaking through my composure. Send me back or keep me or kill me, whatever punishment fits their insult. Something flashed in his eyes, surprised that I would speak to him so directly. There will be no punishment, he said after a moment. Not for you, at least. His smile was predatory. I have a proposition for you, Alara of Ashwood. A chance to secure both your freedom and your village's safety. My heart skipped. What kind of proposition? Spend the night in my bed, he said simply, extending a goblet toward me. If you endure until dawn without fleeing, I'll set you free. No claiming, no binding. You may return to your village, and I'll ensure they remain under my protection. I stared at him, waiting for the trap. Just sleep beside you? His laugh was genuine this time. No, little Omega. Not just sleep. Heat flooded my cheeks as understanding dawned. And if I refuse? Then you return to Ashwood immediately, but my protection is withdrawn. The choice was no choice at all. My village, for all its faults, was home to innocents who had no part in the council's decision. One night, I repeated carefully, and then I'm free. No claiming bite, no binding ceremony. He nodded once. One night. Your courage for your freedom. I reached for the goblet, our fingers brushing. A jolt of something electric passed between us, making my breath catch. His nostrils flared slightly. What happens now? I asked. Theron's eyes darkened. Now we wait for nightfall. And then, Alara of Ashwood, we discover what you're truly made of. I paced the chamber as Theron watched from a chair by the fire, his presence filling the room even in silence. Are you planning an escape route? He asked finally, amusement coloring his tone. I'm not planning an escape, I replied. I agreed to your terms. Yet you move like a caged animal. Perhaps because I am one. To my surprise, he didn't appear angry. Instead, he leaned forward, his gaze sharpening. Tell me about these visions of yours. My hand instinctively went to my grandmother's pendant. They're nothing. Village superstition. Lie to me again, Alara, and our agreement is void. I swallowed hard. I see echoes, I said carefully. Sometimes of what was, sometimes of what might be. And sometimes... I hesitated. Sometimes I see beings that others don't. Spirits that dwell in the forests, the rivers, the stones. I waited for dismissal or mockery. Instead, Theron rose and approached slowly. What do they look like, these spirits? Like shadow and light woven together. They speak without words and move between spaces that shouldn't exist. He stood before me now. And what do they tell you? Warnings mostly. Where not to walk, which plants will heal and which will poison. I took a breath. 5 days ago, they warned me about men coming to my door. I ignored them. Something shifted in his expression. Your grandmother had the same gift. It wasn't a question, but I nodded. How did you know? The pendant you keep touching, he said, his gaze dropping to where my hand clutched the copper raven. May I see it? Reluctantly, I pulled the chain over my head and held it out. He didn't take it, only leaned closer to examine the engravings. Raven whisperers, he murmured. I thought they had all died out generations ago. Raven whisperers? An old bloodline, rare among Omegas. There was a time when they were revered, not reviled. He gestured for me to put the pendant back on. Your council knows nothing of what they've sent me. Before I could ask what he meant, a knock sounded. A young woman appeared with more food and drink. Your bath is prepared in the adjoining chamber, my king, she said, and for the Omega as well, if she wishes. When the door closed, Theron turned to me. You should eat, then bathe. Night approaches. The reminder sent anxiety through me. I moved to the table, selecting bread more to have something to do than from hunger. Most Omegas brought here refuse food, Theron observed, either from fear or from training to maintain the slender figures alphas supposedly prefer. He gestured to the spread. Eat what you wish. You'll need your strength. The implication made heat rise to my cheeks, but I forced myself to eat. When I finished, Theron led me to a smaller chamber lit by oil lamps. Steam rose from a copper tub large enough for two, the water's surface scattered with flower petals. Take your time, he said. I'll bathe after you. He closed the door, leaving me alone with my thundering heart. I undressed quickly, setting my grandmother's pendant carefully beside the tub. The water was perfectly heated, and I sank into it with a sigh. For a moment I allowed myself to simply exist in the warmth. Reality intruded soon enough. One night in the Alpha King's bed, one night to endure, and then freedom. I could do this. I had endured the winter my parents died, leaving me alone at 11. The whispers and isolation as my strangeness became apparent. The hunger when villagers refused to trade with the cursed girl. I could endure one night. When I finally emerged, I found a soft drying cloth and a robe of deep green laid out. I dried my auburn hair as best I could, then donned the robe and secured my pendant around my neck once more. I'm finished, I called. The door opened immediately. Theron entered, his gaze sweeping over me in a way that made me acutely aware of how the damp robe clung to certain curves. Your turn, I said, moving to pass him. His hand caught my arm, gentle but firm. Wait. I froze. He was close enough that I could smell him. Cedar and smoke, and something wild. My Omega instincts, dormant until now, stirred in response, urging submission. I resisted, meeting his gaze steadily despite the trembling in my limbs. There's something you should understand before nightfall completely, he said. I chose you for a reason, Alara of Ashwood. Because I'm a raven whisperer, I guessed. His lips curved. That's part of it. But there's more. He released my arm, fingers trailing lightly. When I entered that hall tonight, I scented something I've been searching for my entire reign, something I'd begun to believe was merely legend. A chill ran down my spine. What did you scent? My fated mate. The words hung heavy between us. Fated mates were the stuff of old tales, an alpha and omega destined for each other. That's impossible, I said. Fated mates don't exist. Don't they? Theron challenged. Then why did every alpha in that hall grow tense when you entered? Why did I know exactly where you stood before I even saw you? Why does your scent call to me like nothing I've ever encountered? If that were true, I countered, why offer me freedom? Why not simply claim me? His expression darkened. Because a true mate cannot be taken, only given freely. And you, little Omega, are as wild and untamed as the spirits you commune with. He stepped closer. I want your surrender, Alara, but I want it given, not taken. So this night is a test, I said, to see if I'll submit willingly. This night is an opportunity, he corrected, for both of us to discover what lies between us. If you feel nothing by dawn, you're free to leave as promised. But if you feel even a fraction of what I sensed in that hall... He left the implication hanging. I lifted my chin. And if I walk away regardless? Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Then I'll let you go as promised. But know this, Raven Whisperer. What exists between true mates doesn't fade with distance. It grows more painful, more demanding, until it consumes you from within. Is that a threat? It's a warning from one who has witnessed it firsthand. He stepped away. I'll bathe now. Wait for me by the fire. As the door closed behind him, I leaned against the wall, legs suddenly weak. Fated mate. The concept was terrifying. Not because I didn't believe, but because deep down I feared he might be right. The jolt when our hands touched. The awareness that hummed in his presence. The way my body responded despite my mind's resistance. I returned to the main chamber and stood before the fire. Outside, night had fallen completely. Within the hour, I would be in Theron's bed. But now, the stakes had changed. This wasn't simply about enduring one night to gain freedom. This was about denying or accepting a bond that could tie me to this Alpha forever. The door opened, and Theron emerged, wearing only loose linen trousers that rode low on his hips. Water droplets still clung to his chest and shoulders. Scars mapped his skin, a history of battles etched permanently into his flesh. "Are you afraid?" he asked, moving to stand beside me. I considered lying. Yes. Of me or of what you might feel? The question cut too close. Both, I admitted. He nodded as though satisfied. Honesty? Good. He gestured toward the bed. Shall we begin, Alara of Ashwood? The moment had arrived. One night to endure, one night to resist the pull I already felt. One night to secure my freedom or surrender it forever. I moved toward the bed, each step feeling like a choice between two destinies. Behind me, Theron followed, a predator patient in his pursuit. As I reached the bed's edge, his voice came low and intimate near my ear. Remember, little Omega, if you endure until dawn, you're free. But first, his fingers brushed the hair from my neck, sending shivers cascading down my spine. Let's see what you're made of. His touch lingered at my nape, a ghost of pressure that made my pulse race. I stood frozen between the instinct to flee and the inexplicable urge to lean into his warmth. Turn around, Theron commanded softly. I obeyed, needing to see his face, to read the intentions behind those amber-flecked eyes. He stood close, his bare chest rising and falling with each measured breath. The scars told stories of violence, of battles survived. Without thinking, I raised my hand toward a particularly jagged mark that ran from his collarbone to his ribs. He caught my wrist before I made contact, his grip firm, but not painful. Curious little raven whisperer, he murmured. Always reaching for what others fear to touch. How did you get this one? Something dark passed over his features. An assassination attempt 4 years ago. The would-be killer believed an Omega's blade would be too insignificant for an Alpha to detect. Was she right? She was nearly right. I survived only because the poison on her blade was diluted. His thumb traced circles on my wrist. Since then, I've learned to trust no one's submission at face value. Is that why you offered me this bargain? I asked. Because you don't trust submission given too easily? His lips curved into a smile that softened the hard edges of power. I offered because you looked ready to bite the handler who dared touch you. Because your eyes held defiance, even as your body trembled. His hand slid to my waist. Because true mates should come together as equals, not as conqueror and conquered. We're not true mates, I insisted, though the words felt hollow. Then this night will prove it one way or another, he replied. His fingers found the knot securing my robe. May I? The question startled me. Alphas didn't ask permission. They took. Yes, I whispered. He untied the knot with deliberate slowness, his gaze never leaving mine as the robe fell open. Cool air kissed my skin. I resisted the urge to cover myself, standing naked before him with only my grandmother's pendant resting between my breasts. Theron's eyes darkened as they traveled over me. Beautiful, he murmured. Like moonlight given form. Heat bloomed across my skin. No one had ever looked at me this way, as though I were precious, desirable, worth savoring. Your turn, I said, surprising myself with boldness. His eyebrows raised, but he complied, untying his trousers and letting them fall. He stood before me, magnificent and unashamed, every inch the Alpha King. My breath caught. Satisfied? He asked. Intimidated, I admitted honestly. His laugh was genuine. Honesty again? You continue to surprise me. He reached for me, hands settling on my waist. We have all night. There's no rush. He guided me onto the bed, the furs soft against my bare skin. I expected him to cover me immediately, to claim what I had tacitly offered. Instead, he stretched out beside me, propped on one elbow, his free hand hovering above my collarbone. "May I touch you?" he asked again. I nodded, not trusting my voice. His fingers traced from my collarbone to my shoulder, then down my arm, as though mapping every inch of me. "When I scented you in that hall," he said, voice low and intimate. It was like finding something I didn't know I'd lost, like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. "That's just alpha instinct," I argued weakly. "The drive to claim." He shook his head, his hand continuing its gentle exploration across my stomach, careful to avoid more intimate places that already ached for his touch. "I've been surrounded by Omegas since I took the throne. None of them affected me like this." His scent wrapped around me like a physical embrace, cedar and smoke and male arousal, making my head swim and my body respond in ways I couldn't control. "What if this is just physical?" I whispered. "Just bodies responding?" Theron's hand paused at my hip. "Then why can I sense your thoughts before you speak them? Why did I know to bring you green robes when I've never seen you wear them? Why does every instinct scream that you belong with me?" His words sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with fear. "Because you're an alpha king, used to getting what you want. Because we're fated," he countered, leaning closer until his lips hovered above mine. "Tell me you don't feel it too, Alara. Lie to me, if you can." I couldn't lie. Not when his proximity made my skin burn. Not when his scent clouded my thoughts. Not when everything within me strained toward him. Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss born of curiosity as much as desire. For one heartbeat, he remained still, as though shocked. Then he responded with a hunger that stole my breath, his hand sliding into my hair to cradle my head as he deepened the kiss. The touch of his lips sent electricity racing through my body, igniting fire that consumed rational thought. I moaned against his mouth, my hands finding purchase on his shoulders, nails digging into skin as I pulled him closer. He broke the kiss, both of us gasping. "Do you believe me now?" "I believe there's something between us," I admitted. "Whether it's fate or chemistry, I don't know." He smiled, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. "Then let me convince you." His mouth found mine again, more demanding this time as his body shifted to cover mine. The weight of him pressing me into the furs felt right in a way I couldn't explain. His hands explored me more boldly now, cupping my breast, thumb brushing over the sensitive peak until I arched into his touch with a gasp. "Tell me what you want," he murmured against my throat, where his lips traced a burning path toward my pulse point, dangerously close to where a claiming bite would mark me forever. "I don't know," I whispered truthfully. "Then let me show you," he replied, his mouth continuing its journey downward. What followed was a slow education in pleasure. Theron's hands and mouth discovered places I hadn't known could bring such sensation, drawing sounds from me I'd never made before. Each touch seemed designed to break down my resistance, to prove the connection between us transcended the physical. And it was working. When his fingers finally slipped between my thighs, finding the slick evidence of my desire, I cried out. "So responsive," he murmured. "So perfect for me." "Theron," I gasped as his fingers moved with deliberate skill. "Say it again," he commanded. "Say my name." "Theron," I repeated, my voice breaking as his touch brought me closer to some precipice I'd never approached before. Something primal flashed in his expression. "Mine," he growled. "Say it, Alara. Tell me you're mine." The demand cut through the haze of pleasure, reminding me of what was at stake. Freedom versus submission. Independence versus belonging. I turned my face away, unable to give him what he wanted even as my body betrayed me. He didn't force the issue. Instead, his movements became more focused, driving me toward a peak I couldn't resist. When it crashed over me, wave after wave of blinding pleasure, I cried out his name again. As I lay gasping, he kissed me gently, giving me a moment to recover. But I could feel his restraint in the tension of his muscles, in the hardness pressed against my thigh. "The night is young," he whispered, "and I'm far from finished with you. little raven whisperer." What followed blurred into sensation and emotion. Theron was by turns gentle and demanding, tender and possessive. He brought me to that peak again and again until I was boneless beneath him. Only then, when I was mindless with pleasure, did he position himself between my thighs, the question in his eyes requiring no words. I nodded, beyond resistance. He entered me slowly, giving me time to adjust, his eyes never leaving mine as he claimed me in the most fundamental way. The discomfort was brief, overwhelmed by the sense of rightness I felt with him inside me. "Theron," I breathed, hands clutching at his back. "My Alara," he responded, voice raw. "My mate." I didn't contradict him this time. Couldn't. Not when every thrust seemed to bind us more tightly together. Our bodies moved together as though we'd done this 1,000 times before, finding a rhythm that built steadily toward something greater. Theron's control began to slip, his movements becoming more urgent. His mouth found my neck, teeth grazing where a claiming bite would mark me forever. "No," I gasped even as my body arched toward his mouth. "You promised. No claiming." He groaned, the sound almost pained, but lifted his head. "I know what I promised," he gritted out. "But gods, Alara, you're making it difficult." The honesty touched something within me. This powerful alpha was fighting his most basic instincts to honor his word to me. Our pace quickened, the pleasure spiraling higher until I felt myself balanced on the edge of something monumental. "Let go," Theron urged. "Let go for me, Alara." I did, shattering around him with a cry that might have been his name. He followed immediately, his body tensing above me as he found his own completion, my name a benediction on his lips. Afterward, we lay tangled together, heartbeats gradually slowing. Theron's weight pressed me into the furs, but I made no move to dislodge him. "Do you believe me now?" he asked finally. I didn't answer immediately, taking inventory of my body, my emotions. What had happened between us transcended physical pleasure. That much I couldn't deny. "I believe there's something powerful between us," I admitted carefully, "but I need time to understand what it means." He rolled to his side, keeping me close, one arm draped possessively across my waist. "Dawn is still hours away. You don't have to decide anything yet." I traced the line of his jaw with my finger, studying the face that had seemed so cold in the great hall, now softened by something that looked dangerously like tenderness. "Tell me about your mother," I said, the question appearing from nowhere. Surprise flickered across his features. "My mother? Was she like me? A raven whisperer?" Understanding dawned. "No, but she knew of them. She was the one who taught me the old stories, the old ways." His finger traced idle patterns on my bare hip. "She would have liked you." "Would have." Pain shadowed his expression. "She died when I was 15, the same night my father was assassinated." The pieces began to align. His distrust of easy submission, his scars, the weight he carried as a king who had ascended too young. "I'm sorry," I said simply. He nodded. "And your parents. You mentioned your grandmother, but not them." "Fever took them both the same winter, 11 years ago," I answered. "My grandmother raised me after. Taught me what she could of her gifts before she passed 4 years ago. Leaving you alone, unprotected." I bristled slightly. I protected myself. I learned to live with the whispers, the fear, the isolation. His eyes softened. "I didn't mean to imply weakness, quite the opposite. You survived when others would have broken." His hand moved to cup my cheek. "It's one of the many reasons you're worthy to be my queen." The declaration startled me back to reality. "I haven't agreed to that." "Not yet," he conceded, "but the night is only half over." Before I could form a retort, his mouth claimed mine again, and rational thought fled under the onslaught of sensation. As his hands renewed their exploration, I wondered if I was fighting a battle already lost. If Dawn would find me not only physically conquered, but willingly surrendered to this alpha who promised not subjugation, but partnership. And for the first time, the prospect didn't fill me with dread, but with a dangerous, seductive hope. Dawn's first pale light filtered through the high windows, painting the chamber in soft grays and blues. I lay awake, watching shadows retreat from Theron's sleeping face. In repose, the Alpha King looked younger, the lines of authority smoothed away. One arm remained possessively draped across my waist, even in sleep. The night had been a revelation. After our second joining, we had talked for hours about his kingdom, about my village, about the spirits I could see, and the legends he had been taught. Then passion had overtaken us again, and again after that, until exhaustion finally claimed us. Now, as morning light heralded the end of our bargain, I faced the choice I had been avoiding: stay or go. Claim my freedom as promised, or surrender to the bond that had grown undeniable. I slipped carefully from beneath his arm, gathering the green robe. My body ached pleasantly, bearing evidence of his attention in small bruises and tender places. As I secured the robe, I moved to the window, gazing out at the fortress walls and beyond them, the distant smudge of forest that eventually led to Ashwood. Home. Or at least the closest thing to home I had known. But what awaited me there? Suspicion. Isolation. The Council's anger when they discovered their plan to insult the Alpha King had backfired. Yet it would be freedom. Freedom to choose my own path, beholden to no Alpha. You're still here. Theron's voice, rough with sleep, startled me. I turned to find him sitting up, the furs pooled at his waist. His eyes were intent upon me. Dawn has just broken, I replied, gesturing to the window. Our bargain is complete. I endured the night. So you did. His expression remained carefully neutral, but I sensed tension beneath his calm. And more than endured, I think. Heat rose to my cheeks at the memory of how enthusiastically I'd participated. The bargain stands, he continued. You're free to return to Ashwood with my protection guaranteed for your village. I studied him, trying to reconcile this honorable man with the cold, imposing figure who had selected me. Just like that? After everything you said about fated mates, about the pain of separation? Something flashed in his eyes. Pain, perhaps, or resignation. I keep my word, Ilara. Always. He rose from the bed and reached for his discarded trousers. I'll have guards escort you home. You'll want to leave before the court awakens. As he dressed, I remained by the window, conflicted. He was giving me exactly what I had wanted: freedom. Yet the prospect of walking away from him created an ache in my chest I hadn't anticipated. What if I stayed? The question escaped before I could reconsider. Theron went still, his back to me. Don't toy with me, little Omega, he said, his voice dangerously soft. Not about this. I'm not toying, I replied, taking a step toward him. I'm asking what would happen if I chose to stay. He turned slowly, his expression guarded, but his eyes burning with hope. If you stayed, you would be my queen, my mate, my equal in all things. Equal? I repeated skeptically. An Omega as equal to the Alpha King? The court would never accept it. The court would have no choice. He closed the distance between us, his hands coming to rest lightly on my shoulders. But I won't lie to you, Ilara. It wouldn't be easy. There would be resistance, challenges to your authority, perhaps even danger. Like the Omega assassin who gave you that scar? His lips curved into a grim smile, precisely like that. There are those who believe Omegas should remain possessions, not partners. They would see you as a threat. I considered this, weighing danger against the promise of belonging. And what of my gifts? The visions? The spirits? The raven whisperers of old were advisors to kings, Theron said, bridges between the physical world and the realm of spirit. Your gifts would be honored, not hidden. Used for the benefit of the kingdom, not feared as witchcraft. The prospect was seductive, to be valued for the very thing that had made me an outcast. And us? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. What would become of us beyond politics? Something softened in his gaze. We would be what we are meant to be. Partners, lovers. His hand moved to rest against my stomach. Eventually parents to heirs who might carry both our strengths. The image sent unexpected yearning through me. Children had seemed impossible in Ashwood. I don't know how to be a queen, I admitted. And I didn't know how to be a king when my father's crown was placed on my head, Theron replied. We learn. We adapt. His hands moved to cup my face. But know this, Elara of Ashwood. I want you for far more than your title or your gifts. I want you for the fire that burns within you, the courage that made you meet my gaze when others cowered, the honesty that refuses false submission. His words wrapped around my heart, squeezing until it was difficult to breathe. This was what I had never expected to find. Not just desire or protection, but recognition. To be seen, truly seen for all that I was. I'm afraid, I confessed, of losing myself, of becoming just an extension of you. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You think accepting the mate bond means surrendering yourself, doesn't it? Not between true mates, never between us. His hands slid down to grasp mine. Come with me. There's something you should see. Curious, I allowed him to lead me to a heavy wooden door on the far side of the chamber. It opened to reveal a narrow spiral staircase, carved into stone. Where does this lead? To the reason I believe we're fated, he replied, guiding me up the winding steps. We climbed in silence. After what felt like hundreds of steps, we emerged into a circular chamber at the top of a tower. Unlike the opulent quarters below, this room was austere, its walls bare save for shelves lined with ancient books and scrolls. In the center stood a pedestal, bearing a single object, a crystal orb the size of 2 fists, cloudy within, as though filled with swirling mist. What is this place? I whispered, sensing power humming in the air. The seer's chamber, Theron answered. It has existed since the castle was built centuries ago. According to legend, it was designed by the first Alpha King and his mate, a raven whisperer like you. I approached the pedestal slowly, drawn by the orb's subtle, pulsing energy. And this? The Heart of Sight. A relic from the time when Alphas and Omegas ruled as equals, before power corrupted the balance. He stood beside me. It responds only to those with the gift of true sight. The Raven Whisperers. As if responding to his words, the mist within the crystal began to swirl more rapidly. Colors bleeding into the grayness. Blues, silvers, hints of gold. It's reacting to you, Theron said softly. In 4 generations of my family, it has never responded like this. I stared at the orb, transfixed. What does it do? According to the old texts, it amplifies the Raven Whisperer's gifts, allows them to see more clearly, to reach farther into the realm of spirit. His voice lowered. It's said that when touched by fated mates, one an alpha of royal blood, one a Raven Whisperer, it reveals the path ahead. The implication was clear. You want us to touch it together? He nodded, his expression solemn. If nothing happens, you can walk away knowing our connection was just physical attraction. But if it responds, he left the possibility hanging. I hesitated. What if I still choose to leave even if it shows we're fated? Pain crossed his features, quickly masked. Then I would honor your choice as promised. But I would hope you might consider an alternative. Not immediate claiming, but courtship. Time to know each other beyond a single night. Time for you to see that being my mate would not mean losing yourself, but finding a partner who values all that you are. His offer was unexpected, a concession I hadn't thought an Alpha King capable of making. Not immediate submission, but choice. Not possession, but partnership. Very well, I agreed, my heart racing. We'll touch it together. Theron positioned himself opposite me. the pedestal between us. Place your hand on it when you're ready. I'll do the same. Taking a deep breath, I reached out, my fingers hovering just above the crystal surface. Across from me, Theron mirrored my position, his eyes never leaving mine. In them, I saw not the commanding Alpha King, but a man offering vulnerability, hope, and the possibility of rejection. Together, I whispered, and pressed my palm to the cool crystal. As he did the same, light exploded from the orb, so bright I had to close my eyes against its intensity. Behind my eyelids, visions cascaded in rapid succession. Theron and I standing before a gathered court, his hand steady in mine. The two of us bent over ancient texts, searching for answers to some unseen threat. My body swollen with child, his hands protective around the curve of new life. The two of us aged, silver in our hair, surrounded by children and grandchildren who bore the marks of both our bloodlines. And through it all, a sense of rightness, of completion I had never known. Not submission or dominance, but balance. Two halves of a whole, each supporting the other's strengths, each protecting the other's vulnerabilities. When the light faded, and I could open my eyes again, I found Theron staring at me with wonder, with hope, with vulnerability I had never expected to see in the Alpha King. "Did you see?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The visions had been clear, unmistakable. We were indeed fated, not in the simplistic way of children's tales, but in the ancient way, where two souls find in each other the missing pieces of themselves. "I can't be a traditional Omega Queen," I said finally, finding my voice. "I won't be silent or submissive, or merely decorative." "I would never ask that of you," he replied, his hand still on the orb, still connected to mine through the crystal. "I need a partner, Ilara. Not a possession. Someone who will challenge me when I'm wrong, support me when I'm right, and stand beside me as we face whatever comes." "There will be opposition," I warned. "From your court, from traditionalists who believe Omegas should know their place." His smile turned predatory, reminding me that for all his gentleness with me, he was still the Alpha King, a man who had fought and killed to protect his throne. "Let them oppose us. Together, we'll show them what true balance looks like." The pendant at my throat seemed suddenly warm, as though my grandmother approved of this path. I remembered her final words. "Your heart is the one thing they cannot take unless you surrender it." But surrender implied defeat, loss. What I felt looking at Theron now wasn't defeat. It was recognition. Not loss, but finding. "I won't return to Ashwood," I decided, the words feeling right. "Not permanently, but I would like to visit, to collect my few possessions, to explain to those who showed me kindness." Hope blazed in Theron's eyes. "You'll stay? You'll be my mate? My queen?" "I'll stay," I confirmed. "Not because you've conquered me or claimed me, but because I choose this path. Choose you, with open eyes." He came around the pedestal then, gathering me in his arms with gentleness that belied his strength. "My Ilara," he murmured against my hair. "My raven whisperer. My queen." I leaned into his embrace, feeling for the first time the rightness of belonging without the fear of losing myself. "My Theron," I replied, lifting my face to his. "My king. My mate." When his lips met mine, it was a sealing of promises, a beginning rather than an ending. I had entered his chamber as a sacrifice, expecting to endure a night of submission to secure my freedom. Instead, I had found a partnership I never dreamed possible, a future where my strangeness was not a curse, but a gift, where the very things that had made me an outcast made me invaluable. Later, as we descended the spiral staircase hand in hand, I glanced back at the crystal orb, now glowing softly in the morning light. It had shown me not just visions of a shared future, but the truth I had been fighting since Theron first looked at me in that great hall. That sometimes freedom isn't found in isolation, but in the courage to trust another soul with your heart. "What are you thinking?" Theron asked as we reached the bottom of the stairs. I smiled up at him, no longer afraid of what lay ahead. "That I didn't just endure the night in your bed, Alpha King. I found my destiny there." His answering smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "And I found mine in the Omega, who dared to meet my gaze when all others looked away." He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "Welcome home, my queen." Home. Not a place, but a person. Not a surrender, but a choice. As Theron led me back toward the royal chambers, where we would begin the work of transforming an ancient kingdom, I felt my grandmother's pendant warm against my skin, a reminder of where I had come from, and a blessing for where I was going. The night I had agreed to endure had ended, but the life I had chosen was just beginning, and for the first time in my memory, I was not afraid of what the future held, because whatever came, we would face it together. Alpha and Omega, king and queen, fated mates bound not by force or tradition, but by choice and recognition of the soul that completed our own.